Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it is the voice of Chi-Town, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the Make It Out Alive, the MOA Broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we have got a tremendous show lined up for today, all kinds of good stuff. We've got the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just about everything between. Our show highlights today, we've got hiking trail homicides, California waterfall drownings, Coldplay concert kiss cam, the drama continues. Classic movie spotlight, and of course, we're going to wind it up and wrap it out with a naked fitness center rampage. All in one episode of the MOA Broadcast, folks. So, going through these highlights, it is, obviously we have some bad things, some negative things that happened. We try and have a focus in this show on situational awareness. Really, if there was one thing that I would want people to take away from this show, aside from the laughter, the jokes, the sarcasm, the non-political stuff, and just the current events, situational awareness is the underlying theme with almost all of these stories. And in many of them, not all of them, but in many of them, being aware of your surroundings and having planned ahead could have had a big impact in the positive for a lot of the people that wind up as a story on the MOA Broadcast. Don't forget, folks, if you would like to submit some feedback, if you have a question, if you'd like to tell me how dumb I sound or how you dislike my haircut, or if you have any ideas for the show or things you'd like to have covered, or you want an explanation of something, feel free to send us an email at info@gearconvoy.com. And a reminder, every week we send out a mini survival kit to the best email or feedback or whatever that we get. So that is that. Don't forget, I mentioned this last episode as well. My book has come out. It was just a novella. This is really intended for like a young adult audience, but I enjoyed it myself. It was the first book I've ever written, so don't expect a whole lot. But it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic, dystopian style book. And it's this group called the Felix Unit of human-feline hybrids who are super soldiers. And they go on fighting the evil Next Corp as they try to reclaim the world after a horrible viral outbreak. So anyway, if you're interested in that, you can find out all the info you want. It is called Combat Cat, The Rise of the Felix Unit. If you go to www.gearconvoy.com, you can find out all you want to know by just clicking the tab at the top where it says the MOA Broadcast podcast episodes and books. Or you can just go straight to Amazon, type in Combat Cat, that is combat with a K, cat with a K, and you will find it very easily. It should be the first and only thing that pops up. And it's a novella. It's only 155 pages. It's what I would consider rated PG-13, so it's completely safe. And that's being generous, in my opinion, on erring on the side of closer to PG. By today's standard, it could easily be made into probably a PG movie. So if you've got kids or young adults or whatever, or you like enjoying it yourself, feel free to go check that out. If you've got Kindle Unlimited, you can download it for free and read it, or you can get it in paperback or ebook form. If things go well, I didn't really do it as a commercial endeavor. It was something I just kind of wanted to do, say I was able to put a book out, even though it's a small one. If I ever get any, good feedback, then I'll continue. It was set up to be a series. So anyway, that's enough on that. And again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to email us at info@gearconvoy.com. We got a bunch of good stories, but first I want to tell you, if you've been a regular listener to the show, I'm a big fan of cats anyway. And the two cats that have been hanging out around their strays, feral cats, whatever you want to call them, street kitties, at my door, I've nicknamed them or named them Mr. Floofers. He's a big fluffy cat. And Dark Knight, both of them are pitch black. And anyway, Dark Knight, who turned out to be a female, just had a whole litter of pitch black kittens. So I'm going through kitty food like you wouldn't believe, taking care of these cats. I used to think I was a tough guy, but now I know these cats have me wrapped around their finger or their paw, their toe bean, whatever you want to say, because I feed them constantly. Okay, that's enough chit chat. Let's get right into this. Man, the first story. Let me get a sip real quick, but man, this first story is a tough one, folks. Okay. This comes to us from the New York Post, and the story originated out of Arkansas State. Devil's Den is a state park or a BLM, Bureau of Land Management, state-owned park or whatever there. Devil's Den mom was slaughtered after saving daughters and then running back to help husband, according to police. Again, the story comes to us out of the New York Post. Horrible story. We're going to jump right in here. A teacher who authorities say admitted to fatally stabbing a couple he didn't know who were hiking with two of their children in an Arkansas State Park is expected to have his first court appearance Friday. And the way the story was written, I'm assuming this was Friday, I guess that would have been the 1st of August. So he's already had his appearance. I don't know what they did there just yet. Andrew James McGann, 28, has been charged with 2 counts of capital murder in the killing Saturday of Clinton David Brink, 43, and Kristen with a C, Amanda Brink, 41. He is being held without bond and is expected to appear at the Washington County Detention Center. Now, folks, this is a horrible story. It's not overly graphic. We're going to go ahead and get through this, but excuse me, if you keep anything in mind, again, it's just situational awareness, and we'll kind of dovetail or circle back around to that at the end of the story. But the details are this: Arkansas State Police Colonel, I'm guessing that's Colonel, where they put it might be Corporal, but probably Colonel, Mike Hagar said authorities are trying to determine a motive for the attack at Devil's Den, a 2,500-acre state park near West Fork, about 140 miles northwest of Little Rock in Arkansas, the state capital. The trails have been closed to the public since Saturday. They arrested McGann, who is the alleged murderer, on Wednesday at a barbershop. We're going to get back to that in a minute, but at a barbershop in Springdale, about 30 miles north of the park, said Major Stacy Rhodes, commander of the department's Criminal Investigation Division. So what happened is this. Apparently this family, Clinton David Brink, 43, and Kristen Amanda Brink, 41, were hiking with each other and their children. Their 2 children were ages 7 and 9. And this allegedly homicidal maniac, I guess he was just in the park. I don't know if he went, we'll get to some details here in a minute, but it appears as though he went there with bad intentions in mind. He had his license plate taped up and other things. So I don't know how bad he wanted to get down when he got there, but this is what he wound up doing. Officials said the husband was stabbed first, about half a mile into the park. Then the mother took her children and ran away to get the children away to safety. Excellent move. That is exactly what, if she didn't have the means to defend herself, that is exactly what she should have done. Get those little kiddos to safety, which is what she did. She got them to safety and hid them apparently in the woods somewhere. Then she went back to help her husband. And unfortunately, this psychopath, allegedly, also stabbed her to death. Now, authorities have not said if the girls, ages 7 and 9, witnessed their parents being killed. The good news, if there is any good news out of this whole story, is that neither of these children, according to the article, were hurt. They're being cared for by family members, and they were not injured in any way, according to the article. Other than that, this whole article is absolutely horrible. They found, according to Major Rhodes, in my 27 years of being with the state police, this is probably one of the most heinous that we've had, especially with the aspect of just how random it was. At this point in time, they have no reason to believe this was anything but a random attack. And I'm telling you what, if you look at this guy's image, his picture, photograph, he looks like an absolute, whether he did it or not, he looks like an absolute nut, in my opinion, when I look at this guy. He looks crazy. Young dude. He's only 28 years old. But after this was all found, so where does it say here? They had a 5-day manhunt along with hundreds of tips. They released a composite sketch and a photo when they narrowed down the suspect's vehicle, which, according to them, had tape over the license plate. So he was aware that he would be under surveillance. I mean, who wouldn't be? You can't go anywhere without getting photographed or videoed now, but he must have had, in my opinion, bad intentions if he pre-covered his license plate with tape. Within an hour of McGann being identified as a suspect, he was caught at the barbershop. You can see photos. They walk right in there. He's still got the apron or whatever it is on, or he just taking it off. He's getting a haircut. I mean, you know how much, this is, I guess, 5 days, somewhere in there from after this took place. How nuts do you got to be if this was allegedly, him that did this? You slaughtered this mother and father in the woods. Leave them there. It doesn't say whether he knew the children were. He must have known the kids were there if he saw the mother and father. My guess is he probably stalked them for at least a little while, or he may have just come around and been and saw them. Who knows? But he had to have seen the mother run off with the kids, I would think. So he slaughtered these parents, and then he just walked out of the park, it would seem, hopped into his car and drove off, went about his business. 5 days later, he's just getting a haircut. And that's when they found him. I mean, man, what a horrible and at the same time sinister story. Can you imagine what's going on? This guy's got to have some bad things happening in his head. Now, to make it even more interesting, if you are a parent, pay close attention. Guess what this guy did for a living? McGann. He was a teacher. He taught in other states before his Arkansas. He had just got this job in Arkansas. I don't think he had even started yet as a teacher. Okay. He has active teaching licenses, and McGann does, the alleged perpetrator in all this. He has active teaching licenses in Arkansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. No interactions or suspensions were noted on the public state licensures in any of those states. He had not yet started his new job in Arkansas at Springdale Public Schools, said Jared Cleveland, the district superintendent. Now, there's a whole bunch of other side level information. Apparently, he had had some disciplinary issues at least one of these places. He had been cleared or whatever, or there had been no sufficient wrongdoing found to terminate him. But clearly, this was a disturbed individual if it was, in fact, him. And think about this. Before this double homicide, capital murder, this guy allegedly that did it, he was a teacher around kids, like young kids. In the article, it was 2 or 3 of the articles I read, they had some conflicting information, but he was around young kids, like 10, 12, 14 years old. That's why, I mean, it's incumbent upon parents to be aware of what, not that that could have prevented this, but there was an interview with one of the moms who said that her kid came home and was saying some very disturbing things about this guy. And anyway, it's just scary. So man, if you got kids, be careful. Just because somebody is a teacher there doesn't mean everything is kosher and cool and all right, because I am sure every parent that recognized this guy's name is just cold sweating it now and thankful that nothing happened to their kids, because there had been some allegedly creepy behavior report on his behalf showing favoritism and some inappropriate behavior. That's all I really said. So I don't know what exactly happened, but this guy probably was starting down a bad path if that was indeed what happened. So man, the other sad thing is the Brinks. This were the victims, the mother and father. The mother and father and their 3 daughters had just moved from South Dakota to the small city of Prairie Grove in northwest Arkansas. Clinton, the father, was supposed to start working as a milk delivery driver on Monday, according to Highland Dairy, his employer. Kristen Brink had been licensed as a nurse in Montana and South Dakota before moving to Arkansas. So what a horrible tragedy. Now, we're not going to sit here and point out what these folks did, could have done, whatever, right, wrong, indifferent. This could happen to anybody. What can you learn from this? If it was me, I mean, this is something that I think about. Obviously, I do a radio show and a podcast on this kind of stuff, so clearly I'm going to be thinking about this kind of stuff all the time. But what can you think about this without being a radio show and podcast host about the Make It Out Alive theme and situational awareness? That's it, folks, is situational awareness, being aware of your surroundings. And that doesn't always help because sometimes people can come out of nowhere, but also having some type of plan, especially if you have family. And I'm not knocking this father at all. His family has my deepest, sincerest condolences. This is horrible. But think about it. If that was you, what would you do? Now that we know this kind of thing can happen and has happened, what would you do differently? I'm not going to advocate various things as far as self-defense. There are tons of podcasts and radio shows and YouTube channels and stuff that talk about all kinds of things from firearms to other weapons. You can do that on your own. To me, the main thing is, like with all of the situational awareness stuff and preparedness stuff, think about it beforehand. Have a plan And what are you going to do to help prepare and defend your family if something like this happens? Not everybody lives in America, so there are a lot of different options that are on the table for some that may not be on the table for others. But the main thing is be prepared. Think about this stuff beforehand. In that moment when this homicidal maniac, whoever it was, allegedly showed up and decided to start taking lives, that is not the time to think about a plan. And unfortunately, the mother and father didn't make it. So they needed more of a plan or a better plan. Learn from that and don't let that, go to waste. And again, our deepest condolences. We're not using them as in a negative and certainly not a humorous, light or a fashion. So hopefully those poor kids, those kids are going to be, that they're going to have to deal with that for life. That's a horrible thing. Okay, we got to move on, unfortunately. We go to California. Now, we typically pick on New York and Chicago for the insane levels of violence. This is a natural disaster, but it involves people from New York City. NYC resident, that's New York City, for those of you who don't enjoy or reside in the Big Apple. New York City resident and 2 others drown after jumping into California waterfall during a hike. What went wrong? Guess what? I read 4 different articles. I still don't know exactly what happened. But this article comes to us from the New York Post, and we're going to hammer right through this. A New Yorker and 2 of his friends leapt to their deaths last week when they jumped into a waterfall during a hike on a remote, treacherous trail in Northern California, according to authorities. Names: Matthew Anthony, 44, of New York City, and 5 other hikers. There were a group of 6 hikers that were on this hike. They set off into the woods Wednesday in Soda Springs, about 3 miles off Donner Pass, a 7,000-foot high alpine trail in northern Sierra Nevada. 7,000 foot, that's pretty good elevation in North America. I'm in the mountains here at 4,200 feet, just high of a mile high. For those of you who don't do America, a mile is 5,280 feet. Now, it's an insane way they came up with that number, but that's 5,280 feet. That's a mile high. 7,000 feet is significantly higher, so that's a pretty good elevation. And they were about 3 miles off Donner Pass. If you ever want to do some scary research, look up the Donner Party and Donner Pass. Another tragic, that would be an original MOA broadcast right there about what happened to those poor folks. I think about 80, 84, 85, 81, something like 80-something people took off on their way to Oregon or California, and about 41 to 45 of them survived. I'll let you figure out what happened if you do your research. But the Donner Party, look it up. Interesting. That's Donner, Donner Party. Okay, after hiking rough terrain for 3 hours, Anthony and 2 of his friends, Valentino Cruz, 50, and Matthew Schonecker, I'm not sure, 50, both from Los Angeles, decided to cool off by jumping into Rattlesnake Falls. According to the sheriff's office, the Placer County Sheriff's Office, the men never came out of the water after they took the plunge. The other 3 hikers, now I hate to say this, but the other 3 hikers made the right decision. They did not jump in after these 3 guys didn't come out. Guys, this is like the age-old principle. Let me get a sip here real quick. My throat is taking a beating. This is like the age-old principle. When you watch pre-flight, when you watch one of those videos on the airplane, or the stewardess, or whatever they call flight attendant, whatever the current politically correct name is, when they tell you, if the mask descend, if we're losing altitude, put your mask on first before you help others. You have to do it that way. The human inclination in most people, especially non-selfish people, is to help their fellow man or their family member or their mate, their spouse, their child, whoever, first. That's wrong. Put the mask on first, because if you go down, then you have no ability to help others, okay? I remember once I had a training class, multiple training classes, in fact, in confined spaces. Now, confined spaces are like, tunnels, caves, small areas, and long story short, frequently they can contain hazardous gases or fumes that can knock you out, that can be fatal very quickly. I remember very clearly I was in one of these classes, and the instructor was making it extremely clear, crystal clear. If you're in a confined space area and your buddy goes into the confined space and he passes out, do not go in after him without notifying help and waiting on the rescue team, even if you think he's dying. Because what's going to happen to you? If he went in there and passed out, you're going to go in and get 2 or 3 or 4 steps in and pass out too. And now either 2 people are going to lose their lives, or 2 people now or more are going to need rescue before anyone can be saved. And I remember in this class very clearly, this one guy, he was very emotional. It's understandable, but his emotions kept getting the best of him. And he's like, there's no way that I'm going to let my best buddy or my workmate die in that confined space, in that little cave or tunnel or whatever, sewer, blah, 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 without jumping in to save him. And the instructor and all of us were like, listen, dude, you've got to understand. If you just go right in without the proper respirator or air-fed respirator or whatever it is, the same thing, you're going to die too, and you're not going to save him. So you've got to resist that emotional, and it's a very human, sympathetic urge to jump in and help someone. You can't do it. Unfortunately, these guys made the right point, the right choice. That is my whole point of that side story there. Let's see, after they jumped in, the other 3 hikers did not jump in. The men, unfortunately, never came out of the water after they took the plunge. The other 3 hikers did call 911, and rescue workers began a frantic search, but the 3 initial hikers did not make it. It took 4 days to recover the bodies. Now, here's the tragic thing of this. These 3 victims had volunteered for the International Circle of Genetic Studies. I have no idea what that is, but according to this, is a program that connects professors of genetics and molecular biology to undergraduate and high school students to conduct studies and research in the field. And what I mean by that is, I have no idea what bearing that has in the story. Is that why they were in California? Is that why they were on the hike? I don't know. But this is the interesting thing. One of the 3 hikers who died after jumping into the California waterfall was a former diving champion. The rescue involved the sheriff office's dive team, search and rescue units, CAL FIRE's technical rescue team, and California Highway Patrol's helicopters all contributed to the search. The 3 hikers who didn't jump in were taken off the trail by a helicopter while the search continued for their friends. A local diver who, and according to one article that I read, was hired by one of the family members of one of the folks, the guys who jumped in and unfortunately deceased. Juan Heredia was part of the team that found the bodies. He did 4 dives of almost 3 minutes each in deep, ice-cold water. So for those of you that don't live at elevation, you got to understand that even in the middle of summer, water is ice cold at higher elevations. Like I said a minute ago, I'm at 4,200 feet here in the hills of Oregon. There is the Williamson River is 3 minutes from where I live. I go fly fishing there often. You can go in the middle of July or August when it is 102 degrees, and that water, which is coming off of a mountain glacier or whatever, it is freezing cold. Freezing cold. These guys were another almost 3,000 feet higher. So I'm sure that water was ice cold. Unfortunately, he told the LA Times a Cruz was allegedly the first to jump into the water. Skinnaker, I don't know, a former high school diving champion who knew the waterfall well, jumped in afterwards. And then the third man, Anthony, I don't know what his first name was. It said it earlier. They don't list it in here for some reason. He jumped in to try and help him when he realized he was in trouble. So the first 1 or 2 guys jumped in. The third guy saw they were in trouble. He jumped in, and unfortunately, all 3 of them perished. So if you read, there were again multiple articles. None of them were crystal clear on what exactly happened to the guys. But I'm guessing, in addition to the absolute freezing cold temperature of the water, it mentioned a number of times about how the currents were extremely strong, and they were barely able to pull their guys out of this. So, yeah, I mean, when you jump into water that cold, if you've never done it at that elevation or that temperature, your muscles just kind of spasm up and lock up on you. You do not, even if you're young, these guys were younger, you just do not have the stamina and the ability to swim like you would in warmer water. They probably thought it'd be warmer, or I don't know. Either way, horrible tragedy. All 3 of them died. And yeah, you got to test those waters first, and that wound up being a fatal mistake for them. Okay, we covered this last episode. I'm not going to get super deep into this because it winds up turning into gossip. Let me get a sip here. This winds up turning into gossip. And I hate sitting here being like a TMZ type show. Nothing against the folks at TMZ. They've broken all kinds of interesting stories over the years. But to me, this was just more of this is the episode or the incident we're talking about is that astronomer CEO. So you may not know who astronomer is, but we all know who the CEO and his HR lady or first HR officer, whatever, Andy Byron and HR head Kristen Cabot. They were the ones that on the kiss cam at a Coldplay concert, the camera zoomed up to them or, panned over them. And all of a sudden on the Jumbotron, they were sitting there embracing each other. The female spun around, put her hands over her face and looked like she wanted to die. And the man who was worth a reported $50 to $70 million. This guy is a rich dude. And he literally jumped on the floor like a kid. And this prompted the lead singer of Coldplay to make some remark to the effect of either they're very camera shy or they're having an affair. Well, turns out both of those, that man and that woman, were married, but to different people. And, in the fallout that followed, they both wound up resigning resigning from the company, Astronomer, some type of tech company, within, 1 or 3 days of this whole concert. I got to be honest, I wonder if this wasn't some sort of PR stunt on some level, because some of it is just it's playing out too bizarre. It's almost too big to be real and organic. But the point being, there are reports. I saw this on numerous different websites and stations, news outlets. I don't know if it's true. That's why we're not reporting on it as fact. There are rumors that the CEO who wound up resigning or quitting his job, he probably didn't have much of a choice. I don't know. Maybe he did, but that's my guess. They probably said, listen, it's time to go. Or if it was a PR stunt, then this was all planned and it doesn't matter. But regardless, Astronomer CEO Andy Byron resigned from his role at the company. The HR department head, Kristen Cabot, who was the female he was embracing, has resigned. Now there are allegedly, according to Fox News, Yahoo, and somebody else, there are rumors swirling on that the former CEO was allegedly planning to sue Coldplay over the incident, even though this all took place in public. However, there have been no legal filings yet. Experts tell Fox News Digital there's not much Byron, that's the guy, can legally do about the situation. According to employment attorney Ron Zambrano, or Zambrano, however you say it, Andy Byron has, quote unquote, has zero grounds to sue. In fact, his lawsuit is dead on arrival, he explained to Fox News Digital. So who knows? I don't know why he would sue. If this was indeed a legitimate situation or a real, mishap, I would think he would want this to go away as quickly as possible, whatever. To me, this is not so much about the drama of it all, people's affairs, whether they're, in the extramarital sense, but their business. That's their business. If they make it public and they do things in public, then they're going to get what they get, I guess. I don't like to focus on gossip, but to me, the main thing was this is a teachable moment on the power of things going viral and the power of the internet. Guys, if you don't go on social media much, like X or Twitter as it's called, and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all the others, within 24 to 36 hours or less, this whole thing was everywhere. On the internet. It was everywhere. There were memes being made. There were video memes being made. There were reenactments being made by people at actual sporting events. There were t-shirts being sold. There were stickers being sold. This was, without a doubt, absolutely one of the most viral moments in recent history, by far, easily. So just a reminder, man, you never know. And there's an old saying, the internet never forgets. There's another a newer saying, the internet is undefeated. Man, you do not want to create a moment like this for yourselves, like these folks did. And there is no walking away from. Now, if it was a PR stunt, then hats off, because slam dunk, they have etched this thing in stone as far as the public is concerned. But we'll probably never know what the actual truth is. But okay, that's going to do it, folks. We got to go to a break. When we get back, we're going to do a classic movie spotlight. This is a big one from John Wayne. I know you'll like it. It's one of my absolute favorites. We'll talk about it more when we get back from the break. More Make It Out Alive with Sam Wilson after this.
This is Dave. Dave makes the tastiest burritos in town. But Nobody knows I exist. I'm serving culinary masterpieces to my mom and a raccoon named Dennis.
Then came Jenny.
Dave, have you tried radio?
Radio, isn't that for traffic reports and late-night alien talk?
It's also for thousands of people who don't know you exist. Yet, radio is affordable, reliable, and it works. Not instant burrito fame, but people start showing up kind of results.
So I partnered with Gold Country Radio, and now people know I exist. I've got new customers, catering calls, and Dennis brought a possum. I think they're dating.
I told you. Radio gets your business heard.
Next up, we a second table, maybe indoor seating.
Want to get your business heard? Visit goldcountryradio.org and click Contact to get started. Radio, small budget, big reach, real results.
You're listening to the MOA Broadcast with Sam Wilson. Will you make it out alive? All right, folks, we are back from the break. It is time for more MOA Broadcast with Sam Wilson. Okay. Now, before we got to the break, we were going to talk about our classic movie spotlight. I brought up many times on the show, I am not a huge fan of, no criticism or whatever, I don't care. I'm not a huge fan of most of the movies and television programs being made today. I don't watch anything current. I just found out on the TV that I have here in the shop that's set up for the, the camera, the security stuff, that I can actually watch television shows. I had no... I'm not a very computer literate person, but so occasionally I'll watch old programs on that. Right now I'm on a Wise Guy kick. If you're not familiar with the show Wise Guy, this was a great show. It wasn't what I would consider maybe top tier, but it was very good, very entertaining. What it lacked, as far as being technical quality, it made up for in being entertaining. You had Ken Wall, Nicholas Banks, who, he's made a resurgence in recent years with I believe the Breaking Bad show. I haven't really seen that either, but I know he's on it. He was also in Beverly Hills Cop. He plays Vinny Terranova, who is the Ken Wall character, undercover cop, infiltrating the mob. Anyway, a really fun show. And now I can sit there and have him playing in the background while I'm out here working on the shop and so forth. Huge fan of the television program Hunter, featuring Fred Dreyer and Stephanie Kramer. Anyway, there were a lot of good shows, especially law enforcement type of stuff in the 80s and 90s that were really fun, and they didn't get too caught up in being politically correct and all that stuff. I don't really care if people believe that politically correct stuff or not. The problem is there's no denying whether you believe in it or not. It puts a damper on things. It's hard because really at the root of being quote unquote politically correct is making sure everybody that watches something is completely happy and never can ever twist or turn and find something even remotely offensive. That doesn't work in the real world, man. It just doesn't work. That's not reality. Especially if you go back a few years, but now is really no different. Reality is sometimes offensive. It is. And, what we were taught 20, 30, 40 years ago was, okay, well, rub some dirt in it and keep moving. Somebody said something you don't like, great, don't talk to that person or ignore them or, get them back just as good as they got you and keep moving forward. But anyway, that is what it is. So today's classic movie spotlight. I'm also a big fan of the movies from the 60s, 70s, 80s. There were a lot of very good and in some cases very raw films that were made back then that just cut to the quick of a problem, and they didn't worry about anybody's feelings, and they were very entertaining. And again, this is how we were taught. When we were kids, there was that old expression, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. We've now encountered a generation or two or three of people that forget sticks and stones. Words are going to put them in a hospital or a mental institution because they can't handle it, which is horribly sad because, that's not the way it has to be. Anyway, today's classic movie spotlight. I'm a huge fan of Westerns of all types. John Wayne is one of my favorites. He's not my top. Some of his Westerns are a little more fun and rambunctious, or not rambunctious, but maybe a little on the nose for me, but I still love him a lot. I would never have a problem watching a John Wayne film. And this is one of my all-time big favorites, Big Jake. Now, this one had a great cast, came out in 1971. In the 70s, Westerns were really rolling good In my opinion, they kind of gotten the genre really down and defined and fine-tuned, and there were lots and lots of nuances you could pick up. Whereas, a couple of years prior, I'm sure a real, film critic is going to pick me apart and say I'm an idiot and don't know what I'm talking about. I don't care. Earlier on in the Western genre, almost everything was a Western almost, or a lot of them were anyway, and they just weren't quite as fun. They weren't quite as well defined, in my opinion. By the time the Duke came along and Clint Eastwood and a few others, Westerns started having some very, very nuanced differences, and they had completely different feels. Whether it was a John Wayne Western, a Kirk Douglas Western, a spaghetti Western, these all Burt Lancaster Western, these all had different feels. So anyway, Big Jake. This one had John Wayne, obviously Richard Boone, who is the main bad guy in this film. He is absolutely fantastic. He steals his scenes, does a great job. Love Richard Boone. He plays off of John. Their chemistry is phenomenal. In fact, I believe it was partly due to this chemistry that Wayne asked him back to be part of his final big send-off in The Shootist, where Richard Boone had a part as well. Great film. Okay, we're running out of time. Maureen O'Hara, Patrick Wayne, who was John Wayne's son, was in it, along with Christopher Mitchum, etc. So this is a rugged, I'll read a little bit here, a rugged Western action film starring John Wayne as Jacob McCandles, set in 1909. Long story short, this is what it is. John Wayne plays Jacob McCandles. He's kind of separated or divorced or whatever it is, estranged from his family, but he's super rich. He was a cattle baron. He literally has more money than he knows what to do with, but he's still John Wayne, walking around there riding his horse, looking all grizzled and old-fashioned, living off the land kind of thing. But his family, where he left the money with the wife and such, they have more money than they know what to do with. And Richard Boone has his band of bad guys, which are handpicked for this mission. They kidnap McCandles, John Wayne's grandson, who is actually played by his real life grandson in this film, or maybe it's his son in the film, but it's his grandson in real life. Really fun movie. And he has to go back and retrieve him. So he takes his son, Patrick Wayne, and a couple of others, Christopher Mitchum, and this Indian guide tracker dude. And it's a blast. If you have never seen this movie, Big Jake, strongly recommend it. Got to go out and watch it. This is extremely family friendly, easily be a PG film by today's standards. You can watch it with the whole family. And in my opinion, it may not be one of the absolute best Wayne films, but it is easily one of his absolutely most entertaining to me. A big bowl of chili, and this film is a great time anytime. So there's also a neat juxtaposition of the Old West and the progress, the modern progress is coming. You see the kind of conflict between John Wayne, playing Jacob McCandles. Jacob McCandles wants to keep his horses, but the cars, the automobiles are kind of making the scene, and along with other technology, magazine-fed weapons among them. It's a lot of fun. Wayne makes a lot of fun of himself in this film. It's very lighthearted, but he is a straight up killer in this film. No quarter is given. So great film. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Again, one of my absolute favorites. Great Western and a great John Wayne Western. Very entertaining. So Big Jake, 1971. Okay, now we go to the story. I wanted to get to this last week, but I ran out of time. We're going to have to keep it down to a couple of minutes because I want to get to the MOA preparedness segment, which is a big part to me, and it's a lot of fun or very entertaining and informative. So we'll keep moving. This goes back to COVID-19, and we've covered masks and vaccines or shots or whatever in the world those shots they were pumping people full of and boosters were. You got to admit, no matter what your beliefs are on that subject, you've got to admit the world went a little crazy in 2020. This whole thing happened so quickly. And let me get a sip here, folks. Okay. You got to admit, no matter what your beliefs are, this whole thing came out of nowhere very quickly. A lot of things were foisted upon people, and people all of a sudden were forced to make decisions. And this cut the country, the community, and sometimes even the families down to the core, right down the very middle. It seems that almost half of everybody fell on the side of, okay, we got to mask up, we got to wear gloves, we got to wear shields and goggles and this and that and hand sanitize and don't go out in public. And the other half is like, okay, what's the big deal? This is basically a flu type deal. We all know that masks don't do this and that and the other. And I'm not advocating one or the other. I don't care. You believe what you want to believe. I'm here to tell you what to believe. But this led to some extreme measures being taken place. And this is one of them. A Las Vegas 7-Eleven security guard sentenced to 5 to 14 years in prison for killing a customer over COVID-19 protocols. This article comes to us out of Las Vegas via the New York Post. And there's no way we're going to have time to cover all the details, but we'll get the broad strokes here. A Las Vegas security guard was sentenced to spend between 5 and 14 years in prison for fatally shooting a customer outside a 7-Eleven convenience store during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Kejia Mitchell, I apologize for the name, tearfully apologized on Thursday, this was a couple of weeks ago, after she entered an Alford plea for the August 2020 death of 56-year-old Thomas Martin. "I didn't mean to take this man's life. I did not," Mitchell cried out in court. "I am truly sorry from the bottom of my heart." The deal, this Alford plea, means she doesn't plead guilty to the murder of Martin, but acknowledges that prosecutors may have enough evidence for a conviction. And ultimately, she is going to prison, according to this. So what happened? This convenience store, a 7-Eleven convenience store, hired armed security to regulate the number of customers permitted in the convenience store on August 26, 2020 would appear, when Martin, the man who was killed, cut the line and attempted to enter. Now, that was a poor decision on his part, no doubt. But what happened? He was blocked by the security guard, Mitchell, apparently. And there is some graphic video of this online where you see this lady sticking a gun to this guy's head. We'll get to that in a second. The man, Martin, was complaining that Mitchell, the security guard, refused to let him in while she had allowed other customers through the checkpoint. The two began arguing as Martin cursed at the security guard and threatened Mitchell before breaking past and into the store. The outlet reported. Again, he shouldn't have done that. That was not right. However, what happened next? The security guard, Mitchell, according to the article, allegedly grabbed the angry customer and the two shoved each other before she took out a handgun and stuck it in his face. And the video on this is very graphic. These two people are just tussling, and all of a sudden this lady grabs a gun and shoves it in his face. This got serious very quickly. She then led him out of the store with the gun inches from his head. When the man turned around and attempted to swat the gun out of the security guard's hand, again, a mistake. A shot rang out. The security guard, Mitchell, who failed her first firearm safety training, was gifted the gun for Mother's Day, according to the outlet. I don't know who by, someone in her family, I suppose. She was arrested and charged with open murder. A grand jury later indicted her for murder with a deadly weapon. The charges were later changed to involuntary manslaughter. Martin, who was a grandfather, was waiting to meet his newest granddaughter when he was killed. The son, Brandon Martin, told KLAS in September 2020 they were in the process of coming back to Vegas to let him meet the baby girl when the bad news hit. Now, guys, this is... Okay, one other point here. The security guard, Mitchell, part of the reason why she got slammed so hard on this was there was a separate incident 19 days prior to this man, Martin, being shot by Mitchell, apparently, when the security guard was recorded dragging a customer across the parking lot. So, and according to the attorney, Mr. Martin wasn't stealing. This wasn't the first one being dragged across the lot. This was the man that was shot in the head and killed. He cut a line, according to the lawyer. And that's what's outrageous is that when he cuts the line, Mrs. Mitchell puts her hand on his shirt, and then Mr. Martin is saying, "Get off my clothing, let me go." She won't do it, and then Miss Mitchell ramps it up, pulls out a loaded gun, and puts it to the side of his face. Hamner added, I don't know who Hamner is, they don't explain here. I guess he was the Clark County prosecutor, I'm not sure. The point of the article was this. What was the guy killed for? It wasn't for shoplifting. It wasn't even for trespassing. It was because these COVID protocols were put in place and only X number of people could be inside the store. Now, it's private property. They have the right to do that, whether you agree with it or not. But the real point is, was this worth killing someone over? Was it worth pulling out a firearm and shooting someone? That is the crux of the matter right here. Some people are going to say, well, he should have just followed the rules. Yes, the guy should have followed the rules. He was wrong on that up front. But should the penalty for not following a crowd capacity limitation or occupancy limit be death? Which is more? That's not even against the law. That was a private thing set up. Jaywalking is against the law in some places. Should you be punishable by execution for jaywalking? That's breaking the law, not a company policy. Breaking the law is more serious. So the point we got to do is where do you draw the line? And apparently the courts agreed because they sentenced this woman to 5 to 14 years. I suspect there will be some more shaking out in court of all this. But man, that shows how crazy the world went just a couple of years ago over masks and occupancy limits and stuff like that. And ultimately, now what do we do? Now, a couple of years later, if that, everybody's doing the same thing they were doing before. What did it really change? The research is extremely debatable. So whatever side you fall on, whatever you believe, the research is extremely debatable. Okay, now we move on to one of my favorite parts of the show. This is the MOA preparedness segment. Wow, that paper twirl got away from me. Now, this is one of the things we talk about all the time. It's one of my favorite things to discuss is being prepared. How long could you go on your own, whether it's you, your family, whoever, in your own home, if you were told to shelter in place in case of a serious disaster or an emergency? Okay, give you an idea. Here where I'm at in the hills of Oregon at 4,200 feet, we frequently, especially in wintertime, have power outages. We have to go on generator power and other things because it's just rough. We're remote and isolated. The nearest actual town or city is about a solid 35-minute drive away. Okay, so during one of these recent power outages, within the last couple of months anyway, a neighbor, someone close by, their power went out. They needed some assistance. Now, they had all the supplies they need, but they had never used them. A lot of this stuff was still in the packages or had been just opened up and hadn't been, tested. They had a generator, but guess what? They didn't have actual oil for the generator. It was just as shipped from the manufacturer. So they had no oil. They had gasoline, but no oil. They couldn't use the generator. So it did them no good at all without oil. It's just like any engine. You've got to lubricate it with oil. They didn't have that. They had flashlights and lanterns, but the incorrect batteries. They needed like those big 9-volt, loaf of bread size, almost like a big handful battery, what they used to call a dry cell type battery. They didn't have those. So their lanterns couldn't be used. The flashlights they had, they needed, I forget what it was. It was either C or D, whatever it was, they had the opposite. So bottom line was this. They had a lot of the supplies they needed, but they couldn't use them because one of them, the batteries were corroded in place, and the other one they didn't have the batteries for. Now, fortunately, I had the correct oil for the generator and batteries, or I had a loan, I think just a flashlight on its own. They were fine. We only needed a couple of hours. But, and the other thing was they actually had a propane stove, but all of their propane tanks were empty. They had some big 5-gallon tanks, but they didn't have the adapter for the small 1-gallon tank fitting, which was on the stove. They had everything and nothing all in one. You don't want to be that person, guys. You want to be prepared. Now, did some research for this segment. We're going to have to keep moving quickly, but there's all kinds of good info here. Everybody loves to talk about when it's a podcast or a radio show or a YouTube video. Everybody wants to talk about guns, ammo, knives, night vision, body armor. And that stuff is all fun to talk about. But really, the most important things are the basic fundamentals, the things that are going to get you through an average day in case of an emergency. The real practical basics. And that's what we're going to discuss here, because if you want to find guns, there's a billion channels on YouTube and Spotify that talk about guns and ammo and how to be a homegrown Navy SEAL and all this stuff. This is for the average, what I would call a normal person, to simply be prepared. Now, the good news is preparedness is growing in popularity across the globe. I was just reading an article the other day about how in the UK, preparedness and prepping is becoming much more popular and common. I don't know if it's true or not because I don't live in the UK, but according to the article, the interest and the actions being taken have skyrocketed in recent months and years, which is great. So, that is delicious. Okay, food. What do you need to be self-sufficient in case of an emergency? According to FEMA and Red Cross, most U.S. households have only 3 days of food on hand, largely perishables and short-term staples. That means if your fridge goes out, you're going to lose a big chunk of your 3 days worth of food. The USDA, I don't know how they get involved in this, but pre and post-pandemic reported that 70% of U.S. households do not store more than a week's worth of non-perishable food. Water. The average home in the United States does not store water at all. Most households depend entirely on a steady stream of municipal supply, and bottled water use is limited to daily consumption. In a grid-down scenario, most people run out of safe water in 1 to 2 days. Guys, that's nothing. That is nothing. And that doesn't include all the people that will be, that's the average. That doesn't even include all the people that will be out of food and water in like 24 to 36 hours, which is horrible. Power and fuel. Fewer than 15% of American homes own a generator. Less than 10% keep fuel reserves. Refrigerated food begins to spoil after 4 hours without power, according to the CDC. Now, if you've got a deep freeze, like many of us, especially in rural areas, do, here's a little pro tip. If you have a deep freeze, you may not ever know, especially if you're gone while it happens, if the power goes out. All you got to do, little pro tip here, this is what I do, put an ice cube into a Ziploc bag, a small Ziploc bag, and stick it in the top of your deep freeze or somewhere visible in your deep freeze. If the power goes out for an extended period of time, when you come in and open that door and that ice cube is melted, it will be inside the Ziploc bag. You will know you have lost power, and you have to just make a decision then based on whether or not your food is still safe. So, just a neat little pro tip there that may come in handy. Most American families, according to FEMA, are woefully unprepared for even short-term emergencies. FEMA recommends a 72-hour kit, 3 days. In general, most of these emergency type situations last 3 days, whether it's in the wilderness or whether it's shelter in place. In my opinion, though, 72 hours is woefully short. Once you hit 72 hours, when you hit day 4 or day 5, it doesn't matter if it's a 6 or a 20-day emergency. If you've only got 3 days worth of supplies, you're now out and in serious trouble. 2 weeks, in my opinion, is the minimum that you should be prepared for. And this is, guys, this is easy. Let me make sure I don't have too much on to... Yeah, just ask the residents of North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. Many of them were without power and water for weeks or months. Now, if you get into months, you're going to be in serious trouble. It's very difficult to prep to not even have to be able to leave your house for months. But weeks, several weeks, is easy to do. Food and water and fuel, whether it's for staying warm and or cooking, are one of the easiest things to prepare for. Things like rice, beans, and other dried goods are going to be, and even canned goods, get canned goods, like if you're going to get like some Chef Boyardee stuff for snacks or canned vegetables. If you can, get the ones that have pop tops that you don't need an opener for emergency situations. Not a big deal if you have an opener, you can use it, but it's always more convenient to just pop that top and all of a sudden you're eating. But you're going to want a stove and propane or whatever it is you're going to use to be able to heat stuff up, boil water, because once you go through all of your water, you may have to have a boil water advisory in effect. If you can't boil water, that water coming out of the tap is almost useless. You are also going to want to think about, how am I going to use the restroom? If the water's been down for days and the toilet's no longer flush, I'm just going to put it like this and keep this extremely nice and squeaky clean. 5-gallon bucket, very reinforced, strong 55-gallon plastic trash bags, and a pool noodle with a slit that will slide over the top of the 5-gallon bucket edge to give you a comfortable seat. I'll let you do the math. You hate to talk about stuff like that. It may be a little unpleasant or uncomfortable, but that's going to get very, very real and very ugly quickly if you no longer have running water. Okay, we're going to have to break this into 2 parts because we're not going to have time today. I'm going to go ahead and pause it right there. When we come back on this next week, we're going to continue this theme on the MOA preparedness segment, and we're going to go and look at a couple of recent, as in the last 3 to 6 months. Here in the U.S., from coast to coast, north to south, there have been natural disasters that have hit almost every single region. And we're going to go through and discuss these, how long people were without power, how long they were without water, and so forth, to give you an idea just how quickly and for how long, what the duration is that it can happen to you. Now, if you lived through one of those like Hurricane Helene or the Kentucky flash flooding or what happened in Texas, you are going to know already how serious this gets very quickly. But if not, we'll go through that. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about just some more things you can do to be prepared. And guys, the thing to remember, This doesn't have to be expensive. If you have some bucks to spend on this, great. You can get a lot of neat things off of Amazon, all over the place. But the bare bones necessities like a propane stove, like instant coffee, like rice, beans, and canned goods, this stuff is very, very easy and relatively cheap. For $100 to $200 at most, you can be very, very well prepared compared to where you are right now, and be ready for when something like this happens. That's going to give you, number one, a sense of calm. It's also going to give you a sense of control if things ever actually go bad. When my friend, neighbor / whatever, they weren't exactly my neighbor, but they were an acquaintance in town here. When they contacted me and their generator was out and they didn't have flashlights and no power and they couldn't cook, they were an older family, they were absolutely panicking because they didn't know what to do. Because they thought they had prepared, but all of a sudden they had no options and they were up against a wall. Now, we quickly took care of them, got things sorted out. But that is not what you want to be feeling when that time comes. Okay, now we go on to our final story. Let me turn the page. Folks, just in case you were curious, we're going to wind up in, that's right, you guessed it, Sarasota, Florida. Another Florida man to close out the MOA broadcast. Okay, I'm going to read the headline and we're going to jump right in. Naked man tries to burn down Planet Fitness, hides in tanning bed. This one comes to us from CBS 12 out of Sarasota, Florida. Deputies arrested a naked man at a Sarasota Planet Fitness who not only attempted to burn down the gym for some inexplicable reason, but also turned it into his own personal naked romper room playground before being found hiding in a tanning bed, buck naked. I mean, I gotta tell you, Florida, they never disappoint. Gotta love it. On Saturday night, deputies from the Lee County Sheriff's Office, the LCSO, said that they had responded to reports of a naked man running through the Planet Fitness on South Tamiami Trail and attempting to start a fire in the bathroom for unknown reasons. Surveillance footage captured Henry Antunes Alvarado. He was reportedly asked by staff to leave the gym at closing time due to his erratic behavior and allegedly being buck naked. Surveillance footage allegedly captured Antunes Alvarado, 25, sprinting down through the facility without any clothes in all of his glory, entering various rooms and even lying down on a hydro massage bed while in the nude. Deputies said he even climbed into the gym ceiling, causing ceiling tiles to fall as he tried to clamber through the ceiling passages through the building. LCSO, that is the sheriff's office, reported that they eventually discovered him hiding inside of a tanning bed, completely naked. He was arrested and faces multiple charges, including indecent exposure, arson, criminal mischief, and providing false identification to law enforcement. Now, before he was found buck naked in the tanning bed, according to officials, allegedly, Antunes Alvarado's had previous encounters with law enforcement as he was convicted earlier this year for attempted burglary, trespassing, and loitering. No word on whether or not he was naked for those crimes as well. Well, I guess at least now he doesn't have to worry about tan lines. All right, that's going to do it, folks. Remember, don't wait to prepare until it's too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.